نبدأ هذه الجلسة بتقديم التحية للحضور الكرام بعد وجبة غداء دسمة استعداداً لوجبة فكرية دسمة أيضاً في هذه الجلسة. I would like to present to you this afternoon Professor Abegaz, who is the Executive Director of the African Academy of Sciences, and also he's a coordinator for the Regional Office of Sub-Saharan Africa for TWAS. This is parallel to ARO in the Arab region. And this is a special session which really demonstrates coordination and cooperation and liaisoning between regional offices, the Arab Regional Office and the Sub-Saharan Regional Office. So we are grateful today for our organizers, the ARO team, who have included this component in our program this year. Professor Abegaz is a chemist. He's specialized in chemistry. He's a professor of chemistry, and he has been very active in research and teaching in chemistry in Europe and in Africa and in the United States. He has contributed numerous publications in his field of expertise, some 170 papers. And also he has been very active in the development of higher education in Africa. In particular, what impressed me is that he initiated 2 PhD programs, one in the University of Addis Ababa and one in Botswana. So you see the spread of his influence. And we are fortunate to have scientists in Africa and our part of the world who could do that. He is also very active in South-South cooperation and liaison. He has indeed been co-founder of a number of networks. I don't want to mention all the networks that he has been able to participate in. Quite impressive list. As far as his teaching experience, I mentioned even in South Africa, he has some, in South America, I should say, in South America, he had some experience in addition to Europe and the United States and Asia and Africa. He is a winner of a number of awards and prizes, and to mention a few, I have to stop and read them for you. The IFS, the NIDA Award, the Pierre Karabe Award, the CN Rao Award, the Chemical Society of Ethiopia Award, and of course, he is a fellow of a number of renowned organizations, but in particular, in our context, he is an elected TWAS fellow. He has made numerous presentations in international, in regional, national, international conferences. He has been a guest speaker in a number of these conferences. I present to you Professor Abegaz to speak on a roadmap towards positioning African Academy of Sciences for better impact in Africa. Professor Abegaz, the floor is yours.
Thank you for your very, very extremely kind and generous introduction. Sometimes when you don't hear good things said about you these days, so when you say this, maybe you shouldn't say anymore. Just go to the next speaker. Right. I was told that in this audience there will be sort of a young people, and what can you tell them about some of the good things that you have done? And that, it was Abdisali this morning, he said he did his PhD studies, Imperial College also, and he came in January 73. I was going to ask him which day, because I came on the 12th, January 73. And that's how long ago I had my PhD, 40-something years ago. But I'm not that old. I did my education at a very, very young age. But in 2011, I was kind of headhunted. Could you come and do something at the African Academy of Sciences? And I completely just closed all my experience, those whatever pebbles he mentioned, the patents, quit chemistry and became a rookie manager. A rookie manager is wonderful, does no management 101, nothing like that. But maybe that is a good start, and a good molecular and chemical background is perhaps what equips you with the logic and analysis to do certain things. But before I really begin, I wish to express my sincere, very sincere appreciation to the TWAS-ARO office and Buea to host us. But I think by allowing the TWAS-ROSSA office in Nairobi to co-stage or participate in this ARO meeting sets a historical precedent and a good example for how we really want to look at things in the future. So really it's a very strong message that we have received when we made the proposal. Could we, in addition to just giving a little talk, actually provide your stage as the occasion, the event to give the certificates of our prize winners of the regional prize and the Young Scientists Prize, and this was enthusiastically welcome. And therefore, really, I want to go on record as making that a special appreciation. A little bit about the African Academy of Science. So again, I'm going to tell you what difference me and my team were able to make over just a period of 3 years, and not talk about the decades of work that we have done in other areas. When I came to the academy, it was simply because I was asked by Mohammad Hassan, can he come and do something? And knowing Mohammad Hassan himself, the Sudanese, the physicist, Oxford graduate, who after some years actually gave up the physics to manage the academy for nearly 40 years. So if he had done it for 40 years, why can't I sacrifice my little years that are left to do this? And that really and so when I came, purely on that emotional feeling, without really knowing into what institution I was going to get into, and after I got there, remember I was in Botswana, I resigned and came to the academy. And what I found, and I asked the big question, did I make the right choice to come here? But having resigned, you don't go back. So I stayed on, and I should say I soldiered on. But what gave me the confidence and the gut to do that was the following. The African Academy of Science was really founded by giants of the time who had great vision, but somehow that glorious days that they had in the early years somehow had floundered. But upon coming to the scene, I found out that it has a huge estate of 5.3 acres, which later on I got it estimated to cost $3.5 million. So we had that. It had a building. The Nigerian government had generously given $5 million, which was being used as an endowment fund. I have myself created organizations with none of this, and it has succeeded. How can an organization with so much estate, a building worth that much, and $5 million, it must be a leadership or some structural or sort of or a mandate, a constitution problem that should be addressed. And that was really the question. I said, if others renting some back room on the back of a building make it, AAS cannot fail. And this was really the beginning. So just to give a little bit of history, it was founded in Trieste, Italy, and you will see here, not Mohammad, Thomas Risley Odihambo, a young man, a graduate of Makerere, who in the 60s wrote an article that appeared in Nature. This was prior to, and in 1973, you may remember the Pugwash Conference, the banning of DDT, a conference that led to the establishment of UNEP in Kenya, in a developing country. And he was the one who said, unless we build first-class institutions in the continent, the brain drain will continue. And he established the International Center for Insect Physiology and Ecology, a world-class institute that has an associated international journal of insect science, again a world-class science. He's the founder of the Kenyan National Academy of Sciences and also the founder of the African Academy of Sciences. You see, Stan, you've seen this man today, Muhammad Abdul Salam, and there is when 33 Africans whose names appear here, those in black are dead, they said, why don't we set up a merit-based academy? And that is how it was set up. Here is the estate, a Google map of our estate in a prime part of Nairobi. That is our building there. And as I mentioned before, as the Secretariat building, I have told you about all that. Just wanted to show you. Again, we really wanted to inspire young people. And on one of the walls of the Academy conference room is an Africa-born Nobel Prize laureates. And I wrote to the Nobel Foundation and requesting for, I made a list of the names, can I have the photographs of these? The Nobel Foundation said, for whatever copyright, legal reasons, we can't give you, but we can tell you where you can get one or two. And I bought a soft copy of that picture for 90 euro, a soft copy, 90 euro. Huh? The others, I had to go and ask the people if they are alive to give me their photo. It's not difficult to get the picture of Nelson Mandela or whatever, but from a scholarly point of view, if you want to display, you need to get their permission. So indeed, we wrote to Mandela, and before, while he was still alive, he gave us that photo, and we told him we're going to put this picture there to inspire young people. And so we have collected the number that we have by way of Africa. Born Nobel Prize winners are quite a few. You can see about 4. If I have missed something, let me know, from Egypt. 4 of them, that many, Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, etc. As you'll notice, not many of them are in the hard sciences. In peace, literature, and peace, literature, chemistry, Ahmed Zawahir, peace, literature, etc. Have their pictures. Some of this I can show from the internet because this is just for a lecture. Egypt, Wole Soyinka, Kofi Annan, the late Wangari Maathai, and then from South Africa born, like that. So what you see, so we have most of them now. We do not have, in fact, since I'm in Egypt, let me just say, I either from the foundation, I need to have official permission to get the pictures of these 3 people. But this one, we are in contact. He's actually a fellow of AAS. This one I have bought for 90 euro. The problem I went through to get a picture of Kofi Annan, you cannot imagine. I found a woman who goes to the same church as he does in Accra, and it's through her that we approached him. You can't easily get addresses to these people. Eh? Yes. So that's what we have. As I meant, just to continue on the academy now, it is an academy of all knowledge, not just sciences, so sociology, theology, etc., and 3 of them are Nobel Prize winners. We are headquartered in Kenya under a special headquarters agreement that gives us diplomatic privileges and VAT-free and other amenities. We've had 4 presidents. The 4th one, the late Odihambo. This man was mentioned many times today, Muhammad Hassan. Ahmad Lamin Ndai, and President Aderemi Kuku, the current president. Just let me give you now a comparison of when I came and where it is now. There were 183 fellows. AAS is not me. AAS is not the secretariat. AAS is the fellows. We must have many fellows. This 1 billion population document, and 183 is a dismal, low number. We've tried to increase that. Now it is this year, this week, 291. There were only 3 women. Now there are 22. Low financial base, really working with, we had a deficit. We have no deficit now. We had endowment fund interest was earning 6%. Now we're getting 12%. Funding had essentially ceased. Just notice this now. In 2011, we just got 100.15, eh? IAP point, that's like less than 100,000. Then have $500,000. During the last 2 years, $7.5 million from DFID, 2.1 million there, $3.3 million there. So the fund is really coming up. I'll explain a little more about that later. We have publications coming, poor infrastructure, improved infrastructure. But what is important here? When I came to the academy, I looked into the Constitution. I got a soft copy and I keyed the word young. There was no hit. I tried youth, there was no hit. Apparently, we had a Constitution that was not forward-looking towards young people. That was not the only problem, but we really did. We went through a period of several months of introspection. What is wrong within us? What is it that we should do? Based on that, a new constitution was designed. And a lot of people said to me, Abegaz, you're here. A lot of people are expecting something. You better come up with a strategic plan. How can I, if the mandate is wrong? So we actually changed the mandate, and after that, a strategic plan. And when you go anywhere, people will ask you, you can say, here is my constitution. Good. Here is my strategic plan. Unless you have, that was my annual report for 2011, 2012, 2013, regularly produced. If you show these 3 documents, then you have perhaps a complete information of who you are, where you want to go, and what you've been doing, unless you have this. And in fact, I can tell you the several millions that have come, you won't believe me, we did not apply. When we started producing this, and I went around giving talk to organizations, we appeared in the radar of the donors. I said, hey, we have such and such program, would you like to do that? But now we have to live up to the expected performance with these. So that is what happened. The other thing really, I remember earlier I said there must be something structurally unacceptable wrong. That is wrong, that needs to be addressed. Look at it this way. The African Academy of Science is a Pan-African organization, or it wants to be. And what we found out was the African Academy of Science had observer status at the former Organization of African Unity. Look at it this way now. If there is an Egyptian Academy of Science, can it be an observer in Egypt? You must be a strategic partner. So we rejected that. And we went into discussion. We went to several AMCOST meetings. I think my friend here knows about that. And so we must have a strategically defined, appropriate link to the Pan-African political entity, which is the African Union. So what we are aiming for now, we were no longer observer, they call us a strategic partner, but we are requesting now either an AU-affiliated organization or an AU-endorsed organization. Why? Because AAS must be looked at in the same way in any of the member countries of the Union. I cannot be in Egypt, that international organization or registered in Kenya. No. We have to be seen the same way. These are the political institutions of the continent. There are the financial institutions of the continent. What is the link of the academy to those two? So the current situation as we now is the African Academy of Science is defined as a strategic partner of the African Union Commission. We're working with AMCOST, even in the closed meeting of the AMCOST Bureau. AAS is invited. We are represented at several levels, at the council level, as the steering committee level, at the high panel. In fact, Ismail Saragledin and Kalistas Juma were the two AAS fellows who were co-chairs of the high panel. We are involved in a number of other organizations, but more importantly, what we are trying to define is what is the role of AAS in implementing the first 10 years of the 50 years AU vision, which is STISA. I think later on we'll hear talk about the On the Wings of Innovation, which will give more insight into this. So I think I have addressed most of this, but the one point I'd like to address is this one now. AAS and NEPAD have now signed an agreement where, in fact, some of the initiatives that we are taking are going to be strongly supported by NEPAD in an advocacy role, and also to get an Africa Union REC buy-in. There is no point in getting a lot of funds, whether it is from European Union or whatever, unless there are matching funds from the continent to run our own affairs. The reason AAS is important, perhaps it's successful now, is because of the assets that I described to you that it has. No donor is going to show me a little check like this and say, I want you to do this, unless I feel that's what I want to do. So that stability and confidence is important. So the increase in fellows, as you can see in 2012, we had a large number of fellows. I want to make reference to this lady who's just become the head of state of Mauritius. I think you probably know about that. So it is good to have our fellows get recognition like that. 2012, 2013, and this past week I have actually announced the 2014. As you can see here, this is mostly from North Africa and Sudan, East and Central Africa. All these up to here are South Africans. Mandela called South Africa a rainbow nation. I would like to get some of those rainbows expressed next year. Eh? But if you really look at the bio of this and the H indexes, etc., you can really see that there is quite a bit of quality there. So you can see that we have underrepresented countries still. Underrepresented countries. We need more people from some of these countries. At this stage, maybe normal, like so. Leading, not represented. We do not have representation. This is our weakness. We need to have representation from these countries, and we have no women from these countries. So these are our weaknesses. We're working on them. Our target is to reach 600 by 2017, 2018, and to have at least 15% of these to be women. I know we need to rush over some of these, but remember I said in looking at the Constitution, AAS did not clearly demonstrate commitment to the youth, to young people. If you look at some of these, you can see how it is. Training courses, some of them are jointly mounted with Elsevier. Also have a program that links young Africans as mentees with top experts in the world as mentors in areas that are important for the future, like stem cell and regenerative medicine. We have the Circle Fellowship, which I'll come to in a moment, internship and sabbatical stays, and identifying young affiliates. And you can see here the 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014 affiliates. These are TWAS young affiliates. Young scientist conferences, public lectures. Sometimes we have Olusegun Obasanjo. He's a patron. In fact, we got the $5 million when he was president of the country. He come and visit us and inspire young people for us. We have a speaker from Morocco on nanosciences, and this lady and her husband actually won the Olusegun Obasanjo Prize for developing tenofovir gel to combat HIV. And I think one of our prize winners is also a person who has contributed a lot in this area. You may have heard Ishmael this morning talk about the square kilometer array. This was the guy who actually won the bid for South Africa to host it. He came and gave an incredible talk about the SKA. And I remember one question that was asked. He said, why? He said, this is a 4.5 billion euro project. It is bigger than CERN, all of that. And one of the guys said, why do you want to spend all that money to look at the stars? Because this is more into, looking into outer spaces. And we are hearing this morning the amount of data that will be received in this collection of satellites whose total area is going to be 1 square kilometer in exabyte data that comes. And when this question was asked, before Bernie answered the question, from the audience, one guy said, don't answer that because I want to answer it. What the SKA is all about, beyond its own right, he said, it is the ability to generate, handle big data. And you remember the talk about big data this morning? So it is the technical skills, the computers, because the computers that are going to handle that data have not been made yet. And that is what is being talked about there. So let me just go quickly, regional prizes. The prize, and then we were actually hosted for our 9th year by the Republic of Brazzaville, and there the president of the Congo announced the Africa Innovation Prize and asked the African Academy of Sciences to host it. I just want to show you here about our governance. I mean, you need about 7 or 8 minutes, Mr. Chairman. We have, the way we are organized is very much like the African Union, having Eastern Africa, Central Africa, etc., the 5 regions. And for each region, AAS has a vice president and a regional representative. So for Northern Africa, I think the office is in Zowile City. So you can see this, and I'll show you a bit more about that. But what we also want to include is actually a vice president for Africans in the diaspora. This is under discussion. And what I have also come here is a new initiative called Alliance for Excellence in Science in Africa, and that's the one I made reference to earlier, to see how the African Union and the AAS can be partners in implementing STISA. Again, the President, Secretary General, former President, Treasurer, then these are the 5 Vice Presidents for the various regions in the continent, and these are the 5 representatives for the corresponding regions. Again, Northern Africa, etc., like that. The publications that we produce, if you look at the functions of the academy as was defined by the founding fathers, there is the part called recognizing excellence, recruiting new fellows, competitive prizes, reviewing, even this kind of work. But we're also involved in programmatic activities. Climate, 6 areas, 6 STI areas, climate change, etc., as you see them there. We are, in fact, last year there was a joint conference on water and sanitation that was held here between TWAS-ARO and TWAS-ROSSA in terms of the water and sanitation. In health and well-being, I think the new initiative that I'm going to talk about will address with it, but otherwise it's the stem cell and regenerative medicine. In the climate change, I think that is what is on the next slide there. It's to deal with 100 young and early career researchers over a period of 3 years, but there is more to it than that. And our programs essentially cover the whole of Africa. We want to identify a home institution in Africa and a host institution in Africa. In the home institution will be the fellow, the nominee for this scholarship, with a mentor. And in the host institution will be a supervisor. So we support all the 2 institutions, the 2 home and host, mentor and supervisor, and the fellow for several years. We give preference to home institutions that are willing to nominate more than 1 person over an extended period so that there is a core group established. That I think is very important, and we're very fortunate that this was very much in line with our strategic plan. Remember this morning, Ismail said, the finance comes last. And indeed, really, this came indeed last with that money as you see there. Its purpose to develop high-quality skills to develop local solutions to the impacts of climate change. So this is more like adaptation, and to strengthen the management and capacity of AAS as a credible scientific institution to process grants, etc. And healthcare and well-being, you can just see Indians, Chinese, South Americans, etc., who are really involved in mentoring African young people. I'm really heard about fascinating cornea replacement, for instance. In many, the traditional arrangement is to have from dead people a bank of cornea that you want to put on other people who need cornea replacement. And always the worry is, of course, rejection. But what this person has developed, and many of the TWAS fellows know Bala Subramanian, in fact, he's a chemist, but yet he has developed skills by which he takes epithelial cells from humans who have cornea problem and grow a cornea out of their own epithelial cells, which will not be rejected. In fact, he has advanced his skills now. He actually puts a scaffolding on the cornea and sprays the stem cells so they regenerate in situ in the eye itself. So these are some of the new developments that are exciting. So if you extend this, it's like really something very fascinating to look into. I have a workshop report on this. A few copies I'd like to share. Microscience project. Our collaboration with this is Jean-Marie Lane, Nobel Prize winner, chair of IOCD board, and we actually work on microscience with IOCD. And I think to save time, let me pass this and go to the new initiatives, which will only take maybe 3 or 4 minutes. We have a new president who actually made a campaign to be president on the basis of a promise to set up these commissions. These are, I think, very important commissions, and we are about to launch this soon. But what has happened is a number of funding agencies were very much concerned, as we were all, about agenda being set in the North for what Africa should do. And what came to AAS was, in fact, different funding agencies having studied who to work with on their own, apparently came with 1 week apart to ask us if we can work with them. Remember I said we appeared on the radar of organizations. So we agreed that they should actually form a consortium, and based on that there is an initiative that I will come to in a minute. This is called IESA, but really just to address this, let me have all of this. So much talk about center of excellence. So much talk about center of excellence. I always say you cannot decree excellence. I say I have set up a center of excellence. Because the reason I say that is quality is a journey. You really should work for it. And you cannot decree excellence. It must be, what does it take then to create a center of excellence? It's a long-term activity. It's a long-term political, human, economic, financial, all of that. It's a long-term. And it requires research leaders, mentors, research administrators to attract and train. It requires interns, mentees, MSc, PhD, postdocs, and the enabling infrastructure, etc. Enabling environment to do quality and related. We had a lot of this. Ability to commercialize outcomes, link with the private sector, all of these. Research leaders, you know, sometimes they say you have a PhD, I came, so I'm a research leader. We don't think that is so. It's not just a PhD you learn for 2.5 years, 3 years, maybe 4 years. You really have to come and be tested. And what does it really take to be a research leader? Those leaders who can carry out high-quality, relevant research, lead a research agenda, engage in intra-African and international collaboration. As leaders, as equals, not followers. I was at a Humboldt meeting, in Hanover, and there was a display of more than 60 research projects in Africans and Germans collaborating. And I was asked to make a reflection, and I said, in how many of these 60 projects are the Africans leaders? Because if they are not leaders, then we're just perpetuating the same thing of dependence. If it is a niche subject that the Africans should have some exceptional advantage, then they must be leaders. I didn't say all 60 of them should be leaders. 5%? 10%? What is it? But you measure this as you go along. If that doesn't happen, then really I don't think we have good collaboration. To be able to attract funding from local, international sources and the private sector. Advocate for research locally and globally. Influence the development of evidence-based policies, etc., etc. So it takes long, like 20 years to develop research leaders. If you were to look at how long does it take the first degree, then the master's, then the PhD, then the postdoc, a second book, to be a true research leader, it takes 15 to 20 years. So in other words, then if you start with something 3,200, etc., you probably get some 50 good research leaders. So the need, so if you need 5 research leaders, you don't say, I choose A, B, C, and D, I make them a PhD and they will be the research. That is not going to work. So I think this is an important point to take. So the key elements of the ISA is it has to be Africa-centered and Africa-led with good Africa focus. Must have strong institutional leadership, a key role in a research leadership, an environment with critical mass. And so if you see all of this, we're not saying this should be at AAS. No, this should be at key positions, strategic institutions in the continent. And we feel that a Pan-African organization like AAS can take some responsibility to give it a go. So what has happened now is we're actually within the African Academy of Sciences to create what is in blue. And if you've seen the economists, etc., we have actually advertised many positions, maybe up to 20 positions between first week of December and June. Currently 6 adverts, international adverts. And this is actually to be, if you see, as like grant managers, strategic thinkers, and monitoring and evaluation experts, a director for the platform, chief financial officer, etc. And we have the commitment of donors for 5 years, after which they will withdraw. So what will happen after 15? Will it fall flat? Or are we in a position to get the buy-in, the political buy-in from the summit of the African Union next month? Launch perhaps ISA in the presence of several heads of states, April 15 or so, and really see how we can actually have this come in. Just to give you, to have the platform, a directorate. If you have seen, there is Wellcome Trust has started a program called Deltas. The Deltas is a 40 million pound project over 5 years, 8 million per year in pounds. And they have said if this is set up, they will hand this over to AAS. And you can take 14% to 13%, up to 15% overhead. That should allow us to get our endowment fund appreciate and get some element of sustainability. So at the moment, I don't want to identify this particular partner because officially has not been done, but we've got that million Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I've just signed a week ago, 2 million. Wellcome Trust that much. And the Wellcome Trust has actually said this management can go to AAS. They've also said something else. If you can leverage some funding from African sources, we will release another 20 million pounds. We're in discussion with the African Development Bank to see if more money can be unlocked through African contribution. We expect the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to launch Grand Challenges Africa. We are not assured that it will come to AAS, but we think we will probably get that. So these are the new developments that are happening. And we also have some secondary staff from Imperial College. This lady, Wellcome Trust, 80% of her time. This is Professor Kevin Marsh, I think a malaria expert that you may know of. He's now for the next 5 years as senior advisor to AAS. I think I'll stop there, Mr. Chairman, and this is the staff AAS, and I want to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Abegaz, for such enlightening and refreshing presentation. Your first name, sir, in Arabic, Berhanu, means proof. Proof, Berhanu means proof. So in your presentation, you have demonstrated that believing in a noble cause and working hard for it is proof, the best proof for successful achievement. Successful achievement to quality, which is a journey. Your journey has been very refreshing for all of us this afternoon, in spite of the fact that it came after lunch. Before we go on, I think, to the prize ceremony, I will entertain a couple of questions if you have, while things are fresh in your minds. Just a couple of questions if you have, 2, 3 questions. Maybe I will say, usually when you embark on such a big project, you face some difficulties, and obviously you have overcome all the difficulties. But for the sake of our audience, our younger people, like Dr. Faham said, who would like to learn more about the experiences of senior scientists, can you single out some difficulty and how you were able to overcome it, if any?
I think the message here is, remember I said I delinked myself from chemistry? And on my card does not say professor. I just say, I used to be a 40-something year. I just Berhanu Abegaz, Executive Director, PhD. Just to make sure that what I'm focused on now is the AAS. Full time. And if people ask me, come and give a talk in chemistry, I don't. Because really remain focused on that. And I think that way, wherever you go, your thinking is very profound, and you can really think about it so much that on any subject, unless there is a little capacity deficiency there, you can articulate really what you want. And therefore, the ability to convince the skeptics. And also that I think is, but he cannot convince all of them. Eh? Yeah.
The fact that there are no questions is evidence, is proof, again, that we have had a very excellent presentation, and no wonder you have been invited as a keynote speaker in a number of enlightened conferences and scientific meetings. Now we move on to the second part of our session here, which is award giving. The first award is the Regional Prize in Science Diplomacy for Dr. Mugyenyi. Dr. Mugyenyi?
Let me introduce him.
Please, yes. Please, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a very special pleasure to introduce a person who has achieved a lot. And by just reading a synopsis of the huge work that he has done, you can have a glimpse that the TWAS Regional Prize has gone in the right direction to a person who deserves it most. Professor Peter Ndimbirwe Mugyenyi is a renowned scientific researcher on HIV/AIDS. The TWAS Diplomacy Prize was the first one to be was launched for the first time, so he is the winner of the maiden prize. He is the executive director of the Joint Clinical Research Center, JCRC, and Chancellor Mbarara University of Science and Technology in Uganda. JCRC is one of Africa's largest HIV/AIDS treatment and research centers. He has set up a highly successful partnership between JCRC and other institutions in Africa, USA, Europe, Japan, and other parts of Asia. This is the kind of collaboration I'm referring to, a collaboration where the African is not a follower but a leader or a co-leader. And that, I think, is important. I think the network consists of 6 regional centers of excellence and with headquarters in Kampala, employing over 250 experts and scientists, with him as the team leader. And one of the things is, I think you are aware of the former president's PEPFAR program about HIV/AIDS. And he has a lot to do with the engineering of that as it applies to the continent. PEPFAR has since put millions of Africans on life-saving antiretroviral treatment. Under his leadership, JSCRC has conducted several collaborative research projects informing regional and international policies and guidelines in the field of HIV/AIDS. And that's, you can see now, the connection with Science Diplomacy Prize. He probably deserves other prizes even on other aspects of the work, but this is the Science Diplomacy Prize. He's written several books: Genocide by Denial, How Profiteering from HIV/AIDS Killed Millions, published by Fountain Publishers, again published by the same publishing house, A Cure Too Far, The Struggle to End HIV/AIDS. These books demonstrate the struggles developing countries have gone through in the HIV era, despite treatment having been possible much earlier than it was eventually received in Africa. Interesting to note also that his role in the battle of mass antiretroviral treatment in Africa has been portrayed in a 2013 movie which is called Fire in the Blood, a documentation by Dylan Mohan Gray. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you'll agree that this is a very deserving person, and I'm going to request the chair and El Fahad, please come and give him the certificate. Professor. And where are the photographers now? Yes, of course. Maybe just shake hands and then you give to him, yes? Yes. So we're going to give a short 10-minute presentation by the prize winner now.
No, later on. You will give it. Okay.
We'll do that, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Abegaz. Thank you for presenting me with this certificate. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being present at this award. Again, Dr. Abegaz, thank you for your generous introductions. And perhaps in the 10 minutes that I have, I should just say something in brief about some aspect of my work. To the audience, I bring you greetings from Uganda, the country that brings you the Nile to Egypt. As has been said, in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, we, over the last 30 years, one of the most challenging problems we have had has been HIV/AIDS. We have had this epidemic spreading across countries and killing millions of people, adults and children. And the mortality has been as high as 1.4 million every year at one time. And yet, if you look carefully, you'll see at the lower part that Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa, did not have the resources to cope with this huge challenge that the continent was faced over the last 30 years. Those of you who speak French, laboratory sans morts, I'm told, means laboratories without walls. That is an expression of the extreme end of some of the facilities, or rather lack of the facilities that we had. And yet, the challenge of AIDS needed much more than that. Now, looking at this, you can see the survival for victims, the patients who suffered from AIDS over the 5-year period. Over the 5-year period, only 8% would be alive. 92% would be dead over the 5-year period. Now, while Africa was facing this kind of challenge across the oceans in the United States, where the disease started, they were having a different picture. And this picture started in 1995, when effective treatment was discovered. Now, if you look on that, you will see in 1995, the turning point. From 1992, the deaths were increasing in the United States and Europe at the same rate as they were increasing in Africa. But then when you come to 1995, you see a dive downwards, meaning the disease was being controlled, but meanwhile in sub-Saharan Africa, the red arrow was going up, whereas by 2001, HIV had ceased to be a major problem in the United States and Europe. So meanwhile, this was happening. Do we have a pointer? If you look from 1955, there had been great progress in Africa. Look, the trend was upward in survival as the continent was conquering disease, increasing immunization. The life expectancy was going up and up and up until this time. Then the life expectancy started falling. In one of the countries, it fell so much that life expectancy, this I think was Botswana. No, this was Zambia. It fell to a mere 33 years. So this is the kind of challenge that we are facing on the continent. Now the question was, could Africa do something about it? Or were we to sit and wait for people to come and find a solution for us? Now, this is what we are told, that public AIDS treatment in Africa and other resource-constrained countries was impossible. This was being said in 2006. And that the main problem was infrastructure. You remember the picture of laboratory without walls, and that these constraints were insurmountable. They were so severe that they could not be overcome. And it was said to treat AIDS required experts, advanced monitoring tests, and others, which were not possible in Africa. I didn't agree, and many of the other Africans didn't agree. All we needed was Africa needed to work with other world experts and world scientists to find a solution. And these world scientists are the kind of scientists that Dr. Abegaz was talking about from Africa itself. And then these days, of course, working together in science is an international good practice, and scientists indeed from other countries. And my institution, the Joint Clinical Research Center, started a pioneering program to fight HIV and prove that contrary to what was being announced, that in fact treatment and management of this epidemic on the using scientific tools and scientists was possible. Now, when you have millions of people dying every year, it constitutes a state of emergency. You don't need to first build world-class laboratories to start working. You can start working because you have the tools. You have knowledge about the disease. You have knowledge about how to test for it. You have knowledge about how to treat it. And you could start in a tent like this, and that's where we started. But above all, you needed information, education, and communication to the population so that they know that you are leading them in a way that will result in their improvement in their health, and also alleviate the suffering and death that were affecting them. Now, while we are dealing with working in tents, we are busy building laboratories. And we build simple but highly effective laboratories with modern equipment coming mainly from our own resources as well as the resources that we got from programs like PEPFAR, which Dr. Abegaz talked about. And we are busy transforming laboratories which looked like this to laboratories which looked like that. But meanwhile, while all of this was going on, we are treating, and many of our patients were getting better, and death rates were decreasing. The key are the young scientists, like this young man, who'd come and work in advanced laboratories with more advanced technologies like PCR that was necessary to do some of the advanced tests that we needed to do. And so training was part of it. While all of this was going on, we were developing a big research agenda because you could not have a successful research center based on one disease. There is a discipline which is developing in medicine, the discipline of emerging diseases. Other diseases can emerge. You have seen what has happened in West Africa. Ebola has hit epidemic proportions. There are other diseases that emerged. Marburg emerged in Germany. Lassa fevers, bird flus. The list is long, and most of the others that we don't already know about. Now, to conclude, this is one of the research that we did called Development of Antiretroviral Therapy in Africa, called DART. We carried out this study. It's a revolutionary study because TWAS said treatment would never work in Africa, that antiretroviral therapy access was never going to happen, constraints of infrastructure and others would never be overcome, ART would never be safe and effectively used. And earlier on, some presenters were asked to say one sentence to motivate young scientists. If I was asked to give one sentence to motivate young scientists, I would say never should never be part of their vocabulary. The collaboration that we formed with other parts of Africa and others abroad, the studies like this one, which we designed and carried out, proved the opposite. This was what was happening, and with the treatment, this is what we are achieving in Africa. Instead of only 8% of the people surviving, we are having over 90% of the people now surviving with innovations and research that we did with partners in Africa. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, Africa has achieved a considerable success, but still needs young scientists to work towards total elimination of HIV/AIDS. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Dr. Mugyenyi. Now, the second prize is the Young Scientist Prize in Applied Sciences, Dr. Zofou. Dr. Zofou, present.
Allow me, Chair, to read just a few things about the Young Scientist Prize. This is for people under 40. Dr. Denis Zofou is a winner of the 2014 TWAS-ROSSA Young Scientists Prize in Applied Sciences. He's been awarded in recognition of his studies on anti-malarial natural product for the treatment of drug-resistant malaria. His research focuses mainly on malaria drug discovery from medicinal plants of Cameroon and Africa. So, you know, malaria continues to be a leading public health threat in Africa, and traditional medicine plays a key role in daily health care. Dr. Zofou and collaborators have been working towards optimizing the quality of plant products, both as a standardized phytomedicines or source of new drug candidates. He is currently leading 2 research projects, one dealing with the development of malaria treatment from medicinal plants, and a second research project which is designed to improve phytomedicine from locally used medicinal plants. Dr. Zofou has more than 20 papers in highly internationally renowned journals, among them being natural products. I'd like to say that the Young Scientists Prize is really a strengthening, a way of patting someone on the shoulder to say, you're doing well, please continue to do well. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in expressing our appreciation, and I ask again the chair and the coordinator to please come together and give the prize, after which he will give his 10-minute presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairperson, for giving me the floor. I have a unique opportunity not only to talk about our research at the University of Buea, but mostly to express my emotion, my joy at this particular moment. The picture you have there in the background is the administrative building of the University of Buea, and the right corner, you have some pictures of our laboratory. That was 2 years ago, because now it has been extended to 3 major compartments. And then when we look at the picture at the right corner, what can we see there? We see the malaria vector, malaria mosquito, sitting on leaves. So I have the impression that where malaria is really operating is where the solution is found. To talk about malaria, we say that this disease is a serious issue, especially in tropical areas. Today, malaria remains endemic in more than 100 countries, but among which we have 48 in Africa. The disease is affecting close to 3 billion people. And if this presentation is going to last for 15 minutes, or let's say 10 minutes, as the chairperson said, by the end, the African continent, we have lost, within the same time, at least 15 children. This can sound very amazing for some people, especially some of us coming from Northern Africa, and maybe even here in Egypt or in Cape Town in South Africa. But this is the sad truth the sub-Saharan Africa is facing every day. The disease has a multidimensional consequences affecting both the economy, the demography, and if I take the case of my country, which is Cameroon, found in Central Africa, till today, despite all the effort from international funding bodies, including WHO and Global Fund, and effort at local level, the disease is still, that is the burden of the disease at the economic aspect is still up to 40% of the family budget. And the situation is so rampant that in Cameroon, malaria is taken just as a description of fever. So when any person has fever, we say it's malaria, which we commonly call in French paludisme. The fight against the disease involves several stakeholders at various levels. The governments are involved, WHO is leading, the technical aspect of it at the international level. We have research institutions. The fight would have been easily successful if a vaccine, which is seen as the ideal solution, was already available. Unfortunately, till today, like in any other parasitic infections, the vaccines against malaria is still a dream. So finally, the fight against the disease relies on three major pillars. One is the early detection of clinical cases. The second is to treat patients with confirmed diagnosis. And the third is to interrupt the transmission. Unfortunately, each of these pillars are seriously limited. If we take the case of diagnosis, the emergence of new species, the lack of facilities has become a major challenge. Just about 5 years ago, we knew that, and we were taught in school that malaria was transmitted by 4 different species of Plasmodium. But today, it has been proven that from South Asia, another species, Plasmodium noelesi, which was thought to be restricted to monkeys, has now become a serious issue and is affecting human beings. And noelesi malaria is rapidly spreading from Asia to Africa, coming through the east. If we look at the drug issues, we realize that the major issue which we are facing is the one of emerging and rapid spreading of multi-drug resistance malaria, which implies that it is a very urgent need for us to develop as many malaria drugs as possible in order to face this challenge. Malaria drugs are usually developed from different angles. We can think of optimizing existing drugs, like it was thought right to combine individual drugs which were already facing drug resistance, but we can equally develop analogs. Among all these strategies, we have the strong belief that if today, despite its permanent seriousness, malaria has not yet reached the extinction level in Africa, it means that we have some appropriate solution which at least have maintained some equilibrium. In Cameroon, like major part of the African continent, herbal medicine plays a key role in the daily health care, including malaria treatment and even prevention. And our country is lucky to find itself in the Congo Basin, which is the second largest rainforest and represent 80% of tropical moist forests in Africa. In Cameroon, more than 500 species of plants have been identified as used to treat malaria. In the daily practice, malaria treatment using traditional medicine can be classified in two categories. The one by specialized medical doctors and the popular traditional medicine, which is practiced by virtually everybody in the community, especially in the rural area. At the state level, the use of traditional medicine is regulated and encouraged at the Ministry of Public Health. But this is not only the dream. When we look at the past experiences, we realize that natural products have been proven to be source of efficient drugs. If we take the case of cancer, we realize that most cancer drugs are from natural products. Looking at the report from 81 to 2002, we realize that 61% of the total of 877 small molecules that were introduced into the drug market were inspired directly or indirectly by natural products. Taking the specific case of malaria, it is known that today the two major drugs, that is the two first-line drugs, which are quinine and artemisinin, are both from natural sources and especially from medicinal plants. If we look at the case of quinine, these drugs have been used for several centuries and still continue to be first-line drugs for the treatment of malaria, especially severe cases. If you look at the case of artemisinin, it is equally revealed that this is the most efficacious drug, especially for non-complicated malaria. So, looking at these two drugs, we quickly realize that in between since the discovery of quinine, right, till the development of artemisinin and the derivatives, several molecules have come and passed. We can all list the case of amodiaquine and so many other ones. So we have the impression that nature provided the solution to any natural problem. And we can have the solution for malaria from natural sources, particularly medicinal plants. So at the Biotech unit of the University of Buea, our main objective is to assess the potential of Cameroonian pharmacopoeia as sources of novel lead or standard phytomedicine. I'm sorry, I've been too long.
2 minutes, yes.
Okay. But the drug discovery enterprise is a very complex one involving expertise from various areas. We need botanists to identify the plant species. We need medicinal chemists. We need biochemists. We need pharmacists. We need clinicians. We quickly rush. The venture always starts with ethnobotanical survey, where we identify plant species through interview of traditional healers. And from there, we prepare crude extracts. And following the procedure of bioassay guided fractionation, that is, we combine the activity with the toxicity test to be sure that the products we are using, we are taking ahead, are effectively active but harmless, or at least have only acceptable toxicity on the human system. This is a typical illustration of our general approach, which allow us to isolate some interesting molecules from the plant species known as Hypericum lanceolatum. Classically in the lab, we use both chloroquine sensitive and multi-drug resistance parasite strain, but we equally include a clinical isolate, that is a malaria parasite isolated directly from patients to be sure that the drugs we are developing are actually the ones to solve the current problem. We have here the candle jar as designed by Traeger and Jensen. This was the first scientist who developed continuous culture of malaria parasite in vitro, but today we use modern CO2 incubators. These are just some of our achievements so far. We succeeded making a thorough review of medicinal plants used in Cameroon. But recently, we equally extended this study to African medicinal plants in general. That was in the book we co-published under Elsevier in 2013. About 70 compounds have been isolated from plants and their activity established. Among these compounds, 15 of them are quite interesting, and we hope to have enough resources and energy to take them some step forward. Okay, through this, we have equally contributed in training 3 master students. And here you have pictures of some of the plants. And you will be just surprised to realize that those plants are very common, including the Dacreodes edulis, which is commonly known as Zofou tree. And the most interesting part of it is that some of these compounds were shown to be acting in synergy with existing drugs, including artemisinin, artemether, and quinine. Here we have some structures which we identify. These are the most active compounds isolated from Dacreodes edulis. And we have these diagrams, though they are a bit complicated. They are illustrating the synergy and antagonism of the natural products isolated and artemether and quinine. But we realize that what we have down here is instead showing antagonism. And this made us to move around and inform traditional healers that it could be very, very risky to combine traditional medicine and modern drugs. You should never do it blindly without scientific evidence. So these are our current activities that we try to rush. We are currently working on 2 major projects, as Professor Abegaz have already mentioned. We intend to design improved phytomedicine from 2 medicinal plants, and at the same time, we are working on developing some selected hits previously identified into drug candidates. The first project is being supported by the African Union through the African Organization for Intellectual Property, and the second is supported by TWAS and the International Foundation for Science.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zofou. I think, thank you.
Okay, sorry, I will plead to say something. I cannot, sorry. It was quite, please, I want to say something, just 1 minute.
Yeah.
Though I'm standing here alone as the winner, this is the result of team contributions. And just a few years ago, somewhere around 2007, when we were still struggling at the Biotech unit to culture the malaria parasite for the first time and establish the screening system, it wasn't easy. It was mostly down to a seasoned scientist with a lot of experience, even as human resource management is concerned, that finally we succeeded. Then we could not imagine that today I will be visiting the heart of the African wisdom as the winner of this prize. So I want to express my gratitude to Professor Vincent P.K. Chitanji, my PhD supervisor and today my scientific mentor, but equally Professor Tane and the other collaborators from the University of Buea, the National Institute for Medical Research and Medicinal Plant Studies in Cameroon. Equally want to, we have started from there. I want to express my warm gratitude to the traditional healers with whom today we have succeeded establishing MOUs guiding our collaborations. For sure, in the coming years, it may be very embarrassing questions to be asked about what have become the Young Scientist Prize winner of 2014. And that's where comes the stress of keeping this up. But in my own case today, I'm just very lucky that the prize did not come alone, but it came together with a research grant, which the World Academy of Sciences have just approved to sustain our activity. So, beside this, we warmly welcome all contribution, all collaboration, especially from the field of drug development and delivery, but equally from international donors, and particularly from pharmaceutical companies, which will really help us make this dream a reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Zofou. We were hoping that we're making up for the time which was lost in the morning sessions. I think we are leaving some time for coffee. But are there a couple of questions, at least a very quick couple of questions, if there are any? I'm looking around. Yes, please.
Doctor, you have studied 200 plants. You have studied.
whom are you talking to? لمن توجه السؤال؟ زوفو، دكتور زوفو. تفضل. Yes, yes, go ahead. علي صوتك.
You have studied 200 plants. Only 70 compounds are isolated. Are you have a problem in the isolation and the structural isolation of compounds?
You understand the question? Quick answer, please.
Okay, thanks for your question. It's just that the time was quite short. Actually, we did not study all the medicinal plants we identify, as we stated. But still, the screening process usually moves step by step. So we start by having some kind of primary screening, and we move on only with plants already showing promising activities. But actually, in the Cameroon context, we are facing a serious problem, especially from our chemist on our chemist site, because we don't yet have all the means, and each time we isolate a product, it must be exported to European countries or China for the structure to be analyzed. It is a very, very serious challenge, and at times they feel like we are putting much pressure on them.
Thank you, thank you. No, we don't follow up questions, please. Last question. We have a coffee break. You can ask all the questions personally after that, but we'll have a second question. تفضل.
Concerning the selection of a plant as a candidate for the purification of molecule biologically active. How the criteria of selection of this plant? Is it there is any criteria or by chance?
No, it cannot be by chance. First of all, we always start with an ethnobotanical survey. That is a survey, interview of traditional healers. We discuss with them, identify the plants they use the most, and we have some kind of assumptive efficacy index for plants.
So
and then from there now we select those that are claimed to be the most active, but equally those that are easily found in the environment. So these are the main criteria.
One final question. Yes.
Once we start now, we do the extraction, either following their procedure of concoction preparation or following standard methods.
Thanks a lot.
One more question for a lady. We did not hear any of the ladies ask questions, and this will be the last one. Any further discussion on any question that you ask, you could follow it up during the coffee break. تفضلي.
My question for Professor Abegaz, how to be member in the African Academy of Sciences and what's the deadline? Is it required self-nomination or official nomination or whatever?
As is common with many academies, it's not a direct application, but nomination by another fellow. I can give you the list of all the fellows, and they can be approached to make a nomination. The deadline is March 31 each year. We finish all processing in 1 year. Any application will be completed the same year.
Thank you very much. At the end of this session, I would like to thank you all for attending. I would like to thank the 3 speakers, and in particular, I would like really to express gratitude for ARO for this joint session between the Arab Regional Office and the Regional Office of Sub-Saharan Africa, and I hope that this is a tradition in the future. Thank you very much, and have a coffee break.